a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Well, when a person comes back on my show more than once, I then consider them my friends. Now, today's friend, between her and her husband, they are authors, poets, bloggers, guest speakers, business owners. Now, her husband is a drummer, a percussionist, teacher, and performer. Ladies and gentlemen, Lillian Brummet. Hi, Lillian.
Hi, Nancy, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to see you all here.
It is. Now, I know we've talked about your business in the past. I can't remember if we talked about you being an author.
Okay.
So have we discussed that? Do you remember?
Well, I know we talked about green living and
Yes.
we talked about gardening.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, start me on that topic and I'll never be quiet. And then what else did we talk about?
I don't remember. But let's talk about
Okay.
blogger. What type of things do you blog?
Okay, so we have two different blogs. One is called Drummet with Brummet. And that blog obviously focuses on drums and percussion, although a wide array of musicians can get quite a bit out of it because it talks about, studio experiences and how to set up your gear and what to do when you're on the road and, how to get gigs on cruises or whatever. So we cover a lot of different topics on that blog. And we accept article submissions. We do interviews with musicians, but we also do interviews with like music teachers, music retailers. We want to give people in the industry an overall view of what the industry involves so that they're better prepared when they step into whatever gig or whatever event that they're about to step into. And when you go into things with more informed, you're less likely to have errors happen, mistakes happen, or catastrophes happen along the way, and you may be prepared with some contingency plans. And so that's really the hope with the blog. It's also like an accompaniment to my husband's drum teaching and repair business. So a lot of his clients also go to the blog for additional information about the industry and Dave and interviews he's been in and all kinds of stuff like that is there. So the other blog, which is actually much more popular, we get anywhere between, I think our highest day was probably about in the 20,000 mark. Wow. And our lowest day is probably around 150, so it really does range. Usually though, we're about 500 to 1,000 people visiting our blog every single day, often more than that, but as a mean average. We've been blogging there daily since 2004. So a lot of years, a lot of days of material there. We cover a wide array of topics. You'll find gardening topics and various genres that we write in as well with our books and activities that we're very passionate about. We have a ton of interviews, a ton of articles submitted by other people who are sharing their expertise in their various genres, whether they're an agent for authors or whether they're a gardening expert or a green living expert, green business entrepreneur experts. We have a lot of different people come on there just to share some tips with our audience and help them along their journey, which is a really exciting experience for me. I end up learning a lot from the people that I get involved with, and it's a great networking tool for me, both those blogs. I'm a powerful networker out there, so those two are my main tools for networking with others.
Okay, I can't help but ask, because both you and your husband have so many things going on. What do you do to relax?
Okay, yeah, we have to actually schedule that off. We've come to the point where we no longer take holiday time. Mm-hmm. We take that vacation time that we're due from Dave's day job, and we give ourselves at least 2 long weekends every month. So between, his days off and various long weekends that are naturally happening, we make sure that we have that time, which gives us that extra chance to either play catch up or to just, spend some time together, which is really, really rare for us.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking it has to be important, to do that, right? In order to keep a good relationship going. It does take
Yes.
working together is one thing, right?
Yes.
Playing together or relaxing together or whatever is totally separate issue.
And it can be so difficult, like for me to have that off button. So we're sitting together, we're having a casual moment on the deck, and we're really enjoying each other's company and chatting, and then start edging off into the topic of business, right? And he has to remind me, okay, this isn't a business date. We're not going to talk about business today. Oh yeah, right. And I have to clear my mind and stop thinking about it. And for me, that's really, really difficult to turn that off button. I think part of it is that Dave gets to go away. He has his day job, he has his bands, he has his students, right? He's away from the office a lot. Whereas it's my 24/7. If I'm not working the office, I'm working the house or the garden. There's something going on constantly. And so organization and what needs to be done and what hasn't been done that I'm beating myself up about, it's a constant flow in my head.
Yeah.
And I think I've developed that slowly over the years, that it became such a pattern for me that it's actually hard to break. Like, it's a good thing because I'm really organized and I follow through and I get things done, things are getting done. But at the same time, that off button needs to get pressed every once in a while because I do tend to fall into depression. I do tend to have issues with stress, being a problem with an anxiety disorder. So I have to make that a priority.
Yeah.
And so that is a constant learning curve for me to remind myself, okay, yeah, not today. Today we're just listening to birds, right? So
I kind of understand that, because I used to air my show like 5 days a week. And then I thought, what am I doing to myself? Because that meant I had to make sure I had all of those interviews lined up, right?
Right.
Then I thought, okay, I'm going to book interviews one every other day. But then, let's just say you said to me, oh, Nancy, but this day won't work for me, but this day will be better. Even though I have somebody booked that day, I will try to fit you in there because it's really hard to,
yes.
I feel like I'm going to disappoint somebody. So I don't know if you feel that same way.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely do. If, I even feel weird about not having a date filled on the blog, because it's a daily blog. And if I miss a date or even 2 days, which is even rarer to have that happen, that stands out to me. That's like, oh my gosh, that's blaringly obvious to me. I don't know if my readers are that particular, if they notice that much, but for myself, because I've created this, what I think is an expectation out there. And I want to meet that expectation, and I don't want to disappoint anyone, like you say, and not have something there. Someone that maybe was there yesterday and is looking forward to something, and the post didn't happen for some reason or something like that. That ends up, I end up feeling a little bit down about that. But it's an easy fix most of the time.
Yes.
But I also have learned to let go of certain things. If I miss some days, you got to learn to relax about that. If I'm not 100, I have to realize I'm human. I'm not going to be 100% all the time. I'm going to have down days, I'm going to have distractions. I'm going to have things that are going to take me away from things that I have planned and I really want to get done. And for me, that drives me nuts. But this took precedence. So now I got to set that aside and I have to go over in this direction. So it's a constant learning curve of finding that balance and being okay with the ebb and flow of things and your own self, like being able to just forgive yourself and let things go. I think when I started on that journey of de-stressing and decontaminating the toxic thoughts that I was feeding into my own self, I realized that it actually improved my business partnership with my husband, because I was able to, in my mind, even though I wasn't verbally saying to him, come on, I need these things or whatever, right? Putting the pressure on him. Instead of that, I found myself growing more compassionate, which we've always tried to nurture for each other, understanding and being compassionate for each other's situations. But I found that much easier to do. It's just sort of come more naturally where I'm like, oh, well, it's not so, so I guess I'm relaxing more about certain things because I've sort of forced myself to take that journey.
Yeah, and there's sometimes things we can't do anything about. Like I booked, supposed to go with a couple of my sisters to Montreal to visit our family, and then on to New Brunswick to visit our oldest brother. But
right,
an airstrike, we're waiting to find out. So it's like, and I booked that time off. Like I haven't booked any interviews for that time that I think I'm supposed to be going away, but now I don't know. So I'm just like up in the air, and I can't do a thing about it. Right.
Right.
So I'm trying not to stress about it, even though I am. But then I think, well, if it gets put off, I could always use my tablet. I can always do interviews on the tablet. But then I got to visit family. I get caught up in my own head, of course. Well,
right.
You don't get caught up in somebody else's head. That was a dumb statement. Sorry.
No, because I think a lot of our thought is external.
Yeah.
As well. So I think it is a good term because we get caught up. It's the dialogue we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
It's the conversation we're having with ourselves, the world that we're creating for ourselves. And it's like limiting us because we're creating a world that doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's all our own dialogue and all our own stories that we're telling ourselves. And then when we break free of that, we're able to like, okay, this is how it is, and be more like a river in life, right? Flowing around things instead of coming across a little pebble and thinking that's it, that's the end, and this is a real issue or a real challenge, So I'm finding, I guess, as we get older too, we tend to, get in that direction,
Well, I don't want to say anything about that. I just turned 75 and I still haven't turned that direction yet.
Oh, well, it sounds like you're on that journey, though.
Well, I'm trying to. I'm much better at, like if, for instance, if I was waiting for you and you're late for some reason to log in or whatever,
right?
That I can go with much easier than if it's me being late to to send you the link. That's what really to me, So I'm much easier on other people than I am on myself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So now another thing I want to talk about, because I don't think we mentioned this before, is the fact that you're a poet, right? Are you a published poet?
Yes. Yeah. Started out as a published poet and evolved into producing books as well. We have 2 books in the poetry series. So when I say we, the first book is all mine, all my poetry. It has 125 poems in that book. It's called Towards Understanding on Amazon, of course. The second book in that series is called Rhythm and Rhyme. And it is like half and half Dave and half mine.
Nice.
And so it was really like a real journey for Dave to come to understand that his writing was considered poetry and that this is publish worthy. And once it was published in that book, he's gotten so many, so much attention for his work that it's really boosted his confidence in writing in that genre, which is a really neat thing to watch and be a part of. So it was really cool. Yeah, the series is called Playing with Words, and right now there's 2 books in that series. We have 6 books altogether on Amazon, and we have, of course, a trilogy coming out later this summer, and then later next year we have another book coming out. So a few things in the works. Yeah.
Good. It's interesting because you mentioned like he didn't realize that that's his works are poetry. People don't always recognize their artistry. My husband was a wonderful cook, and the way he could set up a plate to me was like, that is so beautiful, but he didn't see it the way I saw it,
Right.
And I said, that's magazine worthy. And they said, no, it's just the way I put things out.
Right.
So people have talents that they don't even recognize as talent, right?
Yes, absolutely. Isn't that the truth? And, it started out that way with me too, with my poetry. Initially, I was encouraged to enter contests. Poetry would get read out in class when I was still in high school, things like that, right? And it got me on this journey of experiencing the uncomfortable spotlight, because for me, it was very uncomfortable to be like, oh, we're going to shine on this person and have her, read the poem or share her story or something. And I was just really awkward with that. So it took me a long while to grow comfortable with being that person.
Right.
And once I started doing that, I was getting feedback from people who were exposed from it, from this magazine or that, whatever's. And they would say to me that, their poetry helped them overcome a challenge, or
Oh,
this line in the poem impacted them so much because they just lost their daughter, and all of this. And so these stories that people would tell you, even though your poem, it's kind of like music, even though your poem wasn't written with that in mind,
yeah.
it's how people absorb it and how they convert it into their own life and how it affects them personally. And hearing their stories and how it impacted it gave me the courage to start submitting more frequently. And eventually, over time, I became confident enough as a writer to put it out in a book format. But it did take a while. There were steps, there were journeys along the way for me to grow into that. But the feedback from readers is so important, you guys, for the readers out there that are listening right now. I mean, your feedback, your comments to the editors or whatever gets back to the writers, the poets, the artists, and it has such a profound impact on us. And we hear it. Years, decades later, we still hear those comments in our heads, and it keeps us going when times are tough and we start doubting ourselves.
I just would like to say something on that, because sometimes people make a comment about my show or how I talk, whatever. If you say the negative, like, it doesn't help.
True.
Unless you're going to give a suggestion. Like,
Yeah.
well, rather than, it sounded whatever today, maybe you could do this or whatever. Because if it's just a negative, it doesn't feel good. That's not helpful, right?
That's right. Yeah. If you have critique, you want to do it in a kind and thoughtful and helpful manner, rather than attacking. We want to try to not be the person who's creating toxicity in the world. If we have some feedback, it's always best to connect with a person privately, to let them know directly that, hey, you have this tip for them, or maybe they want to check out this resource that's going to help them with their issue. That would be much, much better. You might even say, hey, I noticed that the sound was off today. I just wanted to let you know in case you didn't know that. That's okay too. But to come down on someone, beat up, like, we don't want to be the bully, right? We don't want to beat up on someone else and bring them down. We want to bring them up, and so that they can be the greatness, the light that they're meant to be, right? So if we can help them by giving them that boost, that's great. Don't drag people down.
Yeah. I just, because you remember those negative ones more for some stupid reason. Because somebody once said I interviewed somebody, I guess they knew, and they said I was very flat. And of course, I like to make jokes about that. And I said, I'm a rather oblong, but whatever, But what did that mean to, like, that was not at all helpful. But it's stuck in my head, and I hate that part.
Right. Well, a lot of what a listener might not realize is the behind the scenes. So someone who has come from a radio background, myself, when you're a host, you're dealing with a lot of background stuff, especially if it's live.
Yeah.
So you got live callers, you got chats coming in, you've got, people talking to you from the office, people waving at you, telling you something's happening, something's coming in, time for a break, whatever. And so you got all of this activity. In the meantime, you're concentrating on your guest, and you're trying to sound intelligent and come up with intelligent responses, and encourage that guest to release information that maybe they haven't in the past, or delve somewhere that they haven't yet delved, so that it becomes this unique and very vibrant conversation. So you're multitasking on a huge level. And if you're doing it by yourself, it can be a little overwhelming, because you don't have a team behind you to handle everything. In this situation, of course, it's pre-recorded. So you have the opportunities to, pause or edits or whatever's, possibly. But when it's live, totally different situation there too. But either way, there's all of the technical stuff, right? We're watching our dashboard, we're looking at the audio graphics and all of this stuff behind the scenes that nobody else is aware of. So, it's important that people be a little more gentle with the hosts.
Well, I think, I pretty appreciate more the feedback from people who've done that sort of thing. If you've never interviewed anybody, you might think it's easy, but try
Right.
it and see. It's just not as easy as you think, right? Like I've
Right.
never been on I've never been a radio host, and I wouldn't be able to critique anybody on that because I have no idea what it would feel like, what it would be like. I've done live interviews, but it's not, very, very few of those. And I had, at that time, I had somebody who could do my editing though for tape shows. Now I
Right.
don't, so nothing gets edited, nothing. So you're going to get what you see is what you get, basically. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, one final thing I want to ask you about is guest speaking, because it says that in your profile that you do guest speaking. So what type of events do you get invited to speak about?
Typically I get invited to come into like writers groups, writers events, things like that. And I get to come in and speak about the behind the scenes activities of being a writer. So I'm not there to talk about like character creation or, tropes or Amazon ads or any of these types of genres that a lot of people specialize in. I'm more about like how to be a writer. So in your office, how are you going to manage your organizing? Are you keeping records of the people that you're contacting, how to do follow-ups, how to do queries, how to be a writer, behind the scenes, the office, the organizing, the taxes, marketing, setting up your marketing plan, your business plan, succession plan, contingency plans. Those are, especially the contingency and succession plans, a lot of artists fail to include those. It's actually kind of simple, doesn't have to be really complicated, but you really need to think about them. What is going to happen if something goes wrong? If you're working with a partner, what's going to happen if something goes wrong with them? They get sick, they fall ill, they're not able to be at the job site for months. Who are you going to then be dealing with? Who is then going to be taking on their responsibilities? What happens if they pass away? Who are you then going to be dealing with? If you're a co-author, who is then going to be handling their portion of the royalties and legalities and stuff that you're now going to have to be dealing with? You need to know that before you get that book published, right? So you need to have those contingencies in place and those succession plans. Who is going to own my books when I pass on? Who do I give those rights to? If should they want to do anything with them? Should they want to keep them on the market or whatever they might want to do with them, be able to give them the rights to do that. So, you want to have that available for people that are left behind in the situation where you're not able to take care of it yourself or the partner that you're dealing with. So I talk about those kinds of things. Coming up on Saturday, I'm going to be a guest speaker for this online event, which is really cool. Martha Tucker is putting this on from Urban Gems Indie Writers Group, and I think she's from Florida or something like that, but her group is international, her group of authors, and they're all coming in to read samples of their published books, and they're getting like judges and contests and all kinds of stuff is happening that day. And I think about the 12 or 12:30 mark-ish, I'm going to be in there to talk about the initial steps of looking at your marketing plan. In this case, I'm going to be speaking about these very new authors, looking at their lives more introspectively. So we're not just an author and just a poet, right? We might also be a grandmother. We might volunteer at this group. We might also have all of these other challenges and experiences that we've overcome, dealt with, or are currently enjoying in our lives. And so when we look at all of these and we write it all down and we start thinking about, okay, well, I don't have to just look for podcasts that focus only on poetry or poets within a certain genre, within a certain state. I can now look at this international audience and start coming in as a grandma who has this wonderful story about family and can talk about that, different stories, different talking points that maybe you've come up with about your experiences as a grandma, for instance. And by the way, I'm also a poet, and you can get my book, right? So you get a lot more media coverage. You can find a lot other different ways of dealing with local events nonprofits, all kinds of things. When you open your world open and realize that, we're not limited to just these 5 or 6 keywords that we're going to be working with for our marketing plan. We now have maybe 500 keywords that we're going to be working with our marketing plan. So when we start that marketing plan, our options are endless, right? So that's what I'm going to be talking about on Saturday, which I'm really excited about.
Okay, now this is going to air after that.
Okay.
So where would people be able to find it?
I think this is a live event. I don't think it's going to be archived. Yeah. And I'm not running it, so I'm not 100% sure on that yet.
Okay, well, maybe I'll try to get this in on Saturday before that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it'll be May 20th. The links are on my Facebook for anybody that wants to possibly join. Otherwise, yes, if you would like to have me come in to be a speaker at your event or for a writers group, if you'd like to come in and do like a Q&A with your group audience, I've done that as well, where they would have their own personal questions already set up, and I come in and they just start shooting them at me and I get to answer them. So, any of that, they just need to reach out to me. Brummet Media Group is what you need to look for online. Brummetmedia.ca is where my website is.
Great. Thanks, Lillian. We're going to end it there.
Okay.
So I appreciate you coming back on the show. Obviously, have a lot of great things to talk about. To the audience out there, thank you very much for watching the show. I really hope you subscribe, because it helps me and it helps a lot of other people get to see the show, because, I don't know, makes me feel good. That's all I can say. It makes me feel good. Anyway, take care, everybody, and peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.